Hi, Pranvera. Thank you so much for helping with my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Oh, that's my pleasure. I am Pranvera from the Republic of Kosovo, but I'm currently located in San Jose here in California, where I'm pursuing a PhD in planetary sciences at UC Santa Cruz. At the same time, I'm the founder of the Astronomy Outreach of Kosovo program, and at the same time, I'm trying to run the organization in Kosovo together with my board and trying to get involved in a lot of outreach events to inspire the young generation about science, astronomy, and planetary science.
Well, that's amazing. I think I'd like to understand what got you interested.
I got interested in astronomy and science as a child when I first got the opportunity to see a solar eclipse back in the 90s when Kosovo were still in Kosovo, the war was still ongoing at that time. Although for me as a 3-year-old, that event was like spectacular. It was, the thing that sort of started me out and got me curious about the skies. And then when I got to school and decided what to do for college, that's when I started getting serious. And yeah, here I am today in United States because of this reason and passion.
So you saw a solar eclipse when you were 3.
Yes, that was in August 11, 1999. And from Kosovo, it was like a 97% coverage of the sun. It wasn't a totality, but it was enough to notice that something was going on. Of course, we did not have telescopes or solar glasses, any of that to view it because our country didn't provide them, and the education of public wasn't very well in astronomy. So certain families and parents were, not letting their children go to school that day and sort of panicking about the event. But my grandfather, he knew exactly what's going on, that this was just a regular phenomenon. It's nothing to be afraid of. So he took a bucket filled with water and he wanted to show us the reflection of the eclipse in the water. So this was one of the safest way to look at the eclipse, but it just was amazing to me. It's like something like that in the sky and we don't even know. It was incredible as a 3-year-old to view that.
I I don't remember anything from when I was 3. So I think that's amazing. Okay, so you saw the solar eclipse when you were 3. Do you remember your like the next significant sort of step on your journey?
Sorry, may you repeat that?
Oh, so you saw the solar eclipse when you were 3. What was the next like big milestone on your path to becoming the scientist that you are?
Well, I was very fortunate to be raised, and I was born and raised in a farm, so it was in the country, and I always had access to the night sky. So for me, being among the stars under the night sky, it was just very familiar. And I think that was also another thing that, during the summer nights, I remember with my sisters and cousin playing hide and seek in the evening, and then you would go and find a spot and hide, and then just stare at the sky and think about things. And as a kid, you get all these questions and you get curious. And I'm happy that that curiosity never faded away. It remained with me, and it just got stronger and stronger every single day. When I got into high school, it was when the internet became popular in Kosovo around 2010, 11. And that's when I started using social media to try to connect with astronomers, amateurs, scientists across the world. Although my English was not very well, I used Google Translate to be able to generate communication. And then one of these folks from Croatia, he decided that he wanted to give me a telescope. And of course, someone that you don't know and you've never met and you only spoke to him a few times over Facebook, how would you, believe that it's going to give you a telescope, something you always wanted, and it was unavailable in Kosovo. And he actually did mean it. And he gave me a 3-inch reflector, which is back in Kosovo. And it was incredible because that was one thing when I actually started to get serious about this. It's like, I got a telescope. These things look fascinating. Looking at Saturn's ring and Jupiter moons and Andromeda and globular clusters and the moon, and it was mind blowing. And then getting to share that with the others, that was one of the most incredible things. And I liked how much the attention of the public was, being taken, and everyone was so excited. Everyone was showing a very, huge interest into astronomy. So I decided to make this thing like into an astronomy organization, and then it expanded very fast. Like within a year, I went from a 3-inch telescope to like having 10 other different telescopes and solar telescopes, because astronomers from around the world, they were seeing my work, they were seeing how passionate we were, but we did not have the resources. So they decided to send me equipments, telescopes, books, cameras, laptops, things that they did not use, probably just sitting in their garages and not being used. So they just decided to send them to me, and they had no idea how much of an impact these equipment made, not only to me, but to the whole country, because my organization went from being just me to being 300 people within like a year. And we were covering all the schools, all the cities, all the public squares, going out there, setting up telescopes, and just letting people look at the sun, like the solar explosions, like look at the moon, look at things that they have never even know they existed or that they could see with their own eye through a telescope. And that's an incredible thing. If you can get a kid or whoever, anyone interested in science, and make up their mind, that tells me that I have reached my goal. But at the same time, in Kosovo, it's impossible to like study astronomy because the university doesn't offer like an astronomy department, or we didn't have an institute that you could be affiliated to do any work whatsoever in planetary science and astronomy. So I chose to go for my bachelor's in geography at University of Pristina. I thought that would prepare me to get closer to planetary science, always hoping that I would get an opportunity in the future to study somewhere else, either Europe or United States. And I was lucky to get to come here 2 years ago to do my master's at UC Santa Cruz. And just recently, I started my PhD as well. And it's going incredible. I'm focusing mostly in studying asteroids and investigating them through spectroscopy. And all this journey has been just so amazing, so inspiring, and I just keep loving it even more and enjoying it every single day.
What do you, in the 300 people that are part of your organization, do you see some people that remind you of yourself and the journey that you're on?
Very much so, because right now I am here and I'm very much busy with school, but at the same time I'm trying to keep, an arm back in Kosovo and keeping in touch all the time with my board and trying to plan all these activities. My goal mostly is to be able to expand our network internationally, to get to connect with scientists and astronomers and get them, to invite them to Kosovo and do events with them, and get the people of Kosovo, especially the students, to give them the opportunity to connect with these scientists, because we don't have, astronomers or, scientists of this type. For example, planetary scientists, we have none in our country. And to be able to bring someone from here and get it to Kosovo to give a talk on the formation of the moon or asteroids or the gas giants or any topic, exoplanets, it's something we never have. So I'm trying to do that as much as I can. And meanwhile, my board are at the same time doing a lot of these activities with telescopes, going to schools, reaching out the public. And at the same time, we are on the process of working with the government, trying to build an observatory and a planetarium in our country. We don't have a planetarium. We just got recently a small observatory in downtown Pristina, which is probably not the best location to have it. So we're trying to get an observatory in a remote area where it would be good enough for people to come there. Like it would be very accessible, and it would be a great location to have enough dark skies for us to be able to at least do asteroid occultations or look for supernovas or do any AAVSOs light curves work. And I'm hoping to bring all these programs there and then get all the students engaged and make this very attractive, a very nice science education center for the people of Kosovo and beyond.
That's amazing. What do you see as sort of the potential of your efforts? I mean, well, what would you, um, if your ultimate dream of what you could do in Kosovo, what would that look like?
Well, in fact, the earlier question you asked, you said if I see other people to remind me of myself back in Kosovo. I do have these young folks in my group that just starting out, coming out of high school, and now making decisions what to do. And a lot of them had to make decisions to leave Kosovo, unfortunately, because they wanted to study a degree or have a better opportunity for better education. So they moved to different countries in Europe. And same with me, I came over here, but my heart is back in Kosovo. I'm hoping and I believe that Kosovo in the future, with having the infrastructure that we're trying to build with the observatory and the planetarium, and our organization is going to be able to have a bright future. And I want our generation to be able to be economically competitive with other countries and to be able to give the contribution just as other countries do. I want our generation to have the capability to make discoveries, to come up with great research on astronomy and planetary science, and not have to leave the country to be able to accomplish these researches and all of that. In my case, when I finish PhD, I'm not sure. I haven't decided what my future is gonna be like. It's gonna be another 5 years. I don't know where I'm gonna end up, but I always want to contribute for Kosovo, even if it's by going back there or by contributing and helping my country from where I am here. And I know a lot of Kosovo is like one of the youngest countries in Europe and has the highest rate of youngest population in Europe as well. We have a lot of talented people and they have so much capability of doing and accomplishing everything as long as we have the opportunity. And I want to try to do my best to build that opportunity for these young folks because they deserve it and they can do so much, but they need support.
Now, you mentioned that you had to come here in order to pursue your interest, and that a lot of people in Kosovo have to leave the country to study what they want. One of the dreams of the internet was to allow for people anywhere in the world to access information and education, but yet it's still important to actually physically go to universities. Do you see this as maybe an opportunity to address this issue where people anywhere in the world have equal opportunities as long as they have access to the internet?
It is very possible. And in fact, due to the pandemic, when I moved here in the States, my first, or I would say my whole master's degree was remotely because we were unable to go to campus physically. And I, in fact, graduated and only got to go physically to the class for 1 month for my entire degree. And it was it was interesting. I would say that I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I probably missed out on a lot of things. Yes, internet is very powerful. You can accomplish a lot of things through internet, but there are certain things that you will not be able to do so. It's different studying from your computer and getting to see things from your screen than actually being there in person. I'm talking from my experience. I have seen so many, documentaries and attend classes and all of that, or like observatories and all of that. And it's totally different going there, being there in person, getting inside the dome, opening the telescope, putting your own eye. It's different. It's that feeling. It's that what gets you passionate about it. And that's, you can't do anything without being passionate about it. I mean, you could, but it's like if you want to do something and do your best, then you better love it. And to be able to love it, you have to have something to make that sparkle. And for me, it's being here in person, being in the States, interacting with people. For me, it's a different culture, it's a different language, it's a different environment. I had to get used to all of that. It wasn't easy, but it was amazing. To me, it was an incredible experience. And then I improved my English. I improved, getting my way around, being independent. Somehow it helped me grow up also as a person. And it helps you in many ways, not only academically. And I'm assuming if people will be able to travel and connect with other people, it will help them a lot. As much as you can do from computer, having the opportunity to do all of these, it's amazing. But not everyone is lucky enough to have the opportunity to move, or some people just don't want to do it. Some people just want to remain their own location and try to do their best from there. And I know we have those people also in Kosovo that just want to do their best from them there. So that's why I'm me and my board, we're trying so hard to work with the government to come up with the greatest solution for these students who will not be leaving the country or don't want to leave the country, so that they can have the opportunity to study what they love, something that they dream, something that they love, not to be able to, study something just because they have to or because they want to make a living out of it. Because where's the joy?
And I have not heard it put so well before. So that's good.
Thank you.
So talking about your current research interest, what most fascinates you right now? What do you find yourself thinking about from
Oh, well, in my interest for a long time have been minor planets, asteroids, comets, meteorites, all of these bodies that just wander the solar system since the very early formation. And there's so many of them, and it's impossible to get a spacecraft to each and every one of them. So we cannot study all of them like by spacecrafts. And I feel like most of the planetary scientists have their eyes on bigger planets or the icy moons at the moment, or exoplanets. So I feel like minor planets don't get enough attention. But at the same time, we have to remember that the minor planets hold like some of the most primitive material of the solar system that have never experienced changes, like never heated enough. And it's like it's safe. It's like a laboratory out there that has been remained from very early ages of the solar system formation. And then we can have access to that, to study it and understand a lot about the formation of our solar system. So a lot of these asteroids that are in the main belt, in the Jupiter Trojans and beyond, they're so different from each other. And each of them tells us about, something about the composition. Their composition tells us something about the history of the solar system. And right now, I'm trying to focus my research in trying to understand these asteroids and their composition using spectroscopy through different telescopes, ground-based operated. And hopefully with the James Webb Telescope, we will be able to learn a lot more about asteroids beyond the main belt, which are too faint, too difficult to investigate from the ground-based assets. And it would be just incredible trying to understand, the hydrated minerals, trying to understand where the water is located, how much water has affected and altered these objects, and why. Is it because of their size? Is it because they experienced some heating episode? Why is all this? Trying to put all the clues together to come up with some solution that this is how everything formed, or have, if their orbits have moved, or it's a lot to be understood from minor planets. And it's one of my favorite subjects. And I'm hoping to dedicate my whole career to minor planets from now on, just trying to understand their types, their classes, to categorize them, and be able to tell a little bit more about our home, our solar system.
Now you mentioned you're using you want to use spectroscopy on these minor planets. I mean, I understand that they're very, very faint, and it seems like that would require kind of evolving. I mean, like the James Webb Telescope, of course, has a lot of spectroscopy capabilities on it. Is it something you could do from Earth, or would you need the James Webb to do it?
Yes, from the ground-based assets, there are not a lot of facilities that do spectroscopy, but the ones that there are, some of them mostly do only visible light spectroscopy. But not everything is, visible in the visible light. Yes, there is a very important feature, the 0.7 micron feature, where you can detect phyllosilicates that are hydrated minerals, and that 0.7 micron signature, it's associated with the iron charge transfer that could be underneath the phyllosilicates, like bearing underneath. And then sometimes could be like, maybe there's just the iron charge, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there is phyllosilicate. So you cannot really say like, oh, I have a 0.7 micron feature, so this asteroid must be hydrated. It's kind of like a long shot. So to be able to understand the hydrated minerals better, like phyllosilicates, carbonates, oxides, silicates, we have to shift to the infrared wavelengths. So the infrared wavelengths around 3 micron to 4 microns allows us to pick these band depths, where gives us signatures of carbonates like calcite and dolomite. And when we find these in the surface of an asteroid, it immediately tells us that liquid water was present in this asteroid at some point in time, because calcite was able to form and dolomite, so it had to have running liquid water for all these to form. And from something like that, you point the telescope, you take a spectra, you get a band depth, and you say, bam, there was water. I mean, it seems almost too easy. And of course, the process is not easy, because you have to have time on the telescope, and you have to get the spectra, and it could go wrong. You could have a bad weather, and then you have to go through a lot of processing, and you have to do atmospheric corrections, thermal corrections, because sometimes these asteroids are big enough that they emit heat. So you want to remove all that thermal correction, and only leave the reflectance spectra. You also have to get a spectra of a star that is very similar to our sun, so that you divide the spectra of the asteroid with the spectra of the star, so that you will be left only with the spectra, the reflectance spectra of the asteroid, without the ones coming from the sun. And then whatever is being reflected from the surface, it's telling you about the composition. It's the best way in science that we can understand something far away from spectroscopy. It's just remote sensing work. And then we have been lucky to have some spacecraft that we send to some of these asteroids, and we're gonna send some more that are upcoming missions. And it's always amazing that we go there, we study these from close, and then we sort of prove whatever we're finding from telescopes. We say, yeah, this actually exists. It's like with Sirius. Scientists were like saying for a long time, yeah, we detect ammoniated phyllosilicates. We are detecting clay minerals and carbonates. And then Dawn mission went there, and it was that. And now with Bennu, we have detected large veins of calcite that are really bright. And we're assuming that Bennu which is supposed to be a fragment of a larger planetesimal, it had liquid water running in the surface because it's showing us that it's loaded with hydrated minerals. But now we're to wait until we bring the samples back to Earth to study, and the spacecraft is on the way back to Earth. I'm not exactly sure when it's gonna arrive, but it's gonna be a historic moment having to get some actually samples from an actual asteroid.
That is amazing. And I just, I mean, I look forward to the day where it is possible to send thousands of spacecraft throughout the solar system and get to see these things.
I have a feeling one day it's gonna be more common than we think.
I do too. Yeah, I mean, 110 years ago, having this conversation would have been beyond people's imagination.
Indeed, and I keep reading these papers from before I was born until nowadays, and you can see how much we have improved every year. Every year we come up with new things because technology is improving every day. It's allowing us to look farther, to have better resolution, and like with James Webb, it's like putting new glasses on and just, you know, expanding and looking out there. It was so amazing to see all the images from James Webb, and yeah.
And this is just the beginning.
Yes, definitely. I just feel like I wish I had a longer life to see how far we're gonna go to exploring the universe. Like, what's the future gonna be like? How far we can actually travel and just see what's out there, because I feel like we're so small, and indeed we're so small in the universe, and we're just unable to like to go further away, like to travel and see what's out there. But thank God we have these telescopes that provide us all this.
And there's people working on making us live longer too. So who knows, you might get that as well.
Yeah. Well, future is bright.
So I wanted to ask you a few questions about the moon and about space travel. Did you know that NASA is planning to send astronauts back to the moon for the first time since 1972?
Yes, I've heard about the Artemis project that they're, I think, planning to send first an orbital around the moon, and then they're going to send astronauts. I'm not sure about the timeline because I don't follow very closely all the space missions, but I am aware of the project, and I think it would make a significant impact.
And you were talking earlier about the importance of actually being at the university versus online. And I know that in the scientific community, the kind of discussion about is it better to send robotic probes or humans, a lot of people look at the cost of sending humans and they're like, do you realize how many robots we could send with that same price and how much safer to be and all this? But I was wondering if your viewpoint about actually being there in person also applied to exploring things like the moon. Like, even though we could probably put, 100 different rovers and landers on it, that we still wouldn't have sort of that same emotional connection to it, the same excitement as a human actually being there, observing it in real time, in person, interactively. Just wonder what your thoughts were.
Well, we have a number of robots on the moon that I'm aware of so far, and on Mars as well. And we learn a lot from robots. We know a lot about Mars because of these robots that are running on the surface and just wandering around and exploring every day. But getting to send human beings, it's a totally different experience, I would say. It's not just the science part. It's not just us humans, we can move and we can do more than a robot can do. It's also the part how much it would inspire and it would affect a whole generation around the world. We know this because we have done this once in the 60s with the Apollo mission. And I have not experienced that, but even our generation today that have not been alive to experience the launch and see all that, even today we get goosebumps and get inspired about the whole thing because it was one of the greatest human accomplishments to be able to leave our planet and land on another world, which is crazy. It's amazing what people did back in the 60s. To be able to do that again, it would be amazing. It would be very inspiring for everyone. And with today's technology, we would be able to do a lot more on the surface of the moon. We have a lot of technology that the humans would be able to operate. And I understand of all the risks that are affiliated with, human space flights and, to go to the moon, and you're sending human beings, not just robots, but it's worth the risk. And I'm sure there are people who would put their, self out there to just go and have the experience and explore, because I'm sure with today's technology, the way we have developed all these spacecraft going and landing by themselves, and I think we have achieved so much that the risks would be less than they would be in the 60s. Imagine, like, sometimes I think, like, just the computer, like the power of the computer that they operated back in the 60s. I'm like, how the hell did they do that back then? It's mind-blowing. And now imagine today that you have all the technology that we have available, like with SpaceX and NASA and all joining together. I think this would be possible, and it would go totally well. Of course, it needs to be planned, and it would take time, and it's gonna take time, but it's gonna happen. And I'm hoping so much it's gonna happen in my lifetime, so that I would be able to witness the landing on the moon again, and maybe the first landing on Mars. And I'm hoping that it's gonna happen soon, and it's a very exciting program. And I see that a lot of colleagues and friends that I have speak about it. They're already getting excited, and we will be able to explore and learn a lot more with a lot, more devices and technology that we have handy. Even if we go there in person, we have all the stuff that we can build, and we can learn much more, and then return the people safely to Earth.
I know. I've heard some people in the 50s and 60s who lived during that time remark now that they always knew they would see the first person land on the moon, but they never imagined they would see the last. It's kind of like we lost.
Yeah, I am also surprised. I'm also surprised for a country as powerful as United States that was able to send people to the moon in the 60s and not send anyone else until today from then. It's a little bit surprising to me, but I am sure this is going to be achieved very soon, because nowadays we have a lot more people that are being interested in the sciences and are having the opportunity. And SpaceX, for example, Elon Musk, it's not just doing a lot of great science out there, but it's become an inspiration for a lot of young people to pursue engineering degrees and STEM degrees, STEM related fields. And this can help us, because we need new engineers. We need more people in science, because this can only be accomplished working as a team.
And you mentioned the future is bright. So if you use your imagination and think out 200 years from now, what would you hope humanity looks like in 200 years?
I think about that a lot, and it's funny because a lot of this has been presented many times on the movies, and sometimes it has been presented as a good thing, sometimes not as a good thing. And I know that nowadays, especially on social media, you go out there and you get discouraged very easily. You can see how people have reached a point that they feel very divided, and all is this because due to politics, due to a lot of bad things going on around the world, and then the pandemic, and people have been frustrated, and they have kind of had enough, and they are just, everybody's angry, everybody's like being so sensitive, and we feel like this is so bad, like this is the end, like we're no good for each other. That's how we feel. But when you think, I say, astronomer or a planetary scientist, and you think that, for God's sake, in the whole solar system and galaxy and the universe that we know so far, it's only Earth that is, a planet habitable. And it's us human beings making this planet alive. And we cannot turn against each other. And this is no good for us, for anyone. And people are going to realize that at some point. I hope, with all the wars, with all the bad things going on, I hope at some point it's going to reach a stop and we're going to open our eyes and realize that we have bigger problems to deal with other than fighting ourselves. And once we realize that, we need somehow to open our eyes and look at the future and somehow set our priorities to something bigger. And to be able to reach that, to be able to change people's mind, we're trying to do that through science, because science is one thing that will make you think big, will make you think something bigger than you, and then you're gonna have a totally different path. You're not gonna think about things that are stupid and are small, like fighting someone else or trying to compete with someone and all of that. It's about reaching for a bigger dream. And only then you will be able to realize that, hey, we're worrying for things that doesn't make sense when we can do so much more. And in fact, there is one sentence that strikes me all the time. It's an astronaut, I'm not sure about which one, an Apollo astronaut who landed on the moon and looked at the Earth and just saw our planet from far away. And he said, I wish I could grab a politician from the neck and say, hey, look at that, you. Because it's like, yes, a lot of these governments have their eyes into other things. And it's hard to realize, people think that science is, not important in a lot of countries, including Kosovo. And this is my exact reason why I'm trying to get the government to help us to build the observatory and planetarium, because more we inspire young people about science, we're gonna change their mind. We're gonna make them think about something bigger, and they're gonna dream big. They're gonna do something significant with their careers, and that's how we're gonna change the world. That's how we can have a guaranteed bright future.
I got several things I wanted to get your thoughts on. First of all, about the whole politician and looking at the Earth. I feel like the cost to launch is about to go way down. If you look at what SpaceX is doing with Starship, the idea of having 100% reusable spacecraft that you could use for point-to-point travel on Earth and get halfway around the world in 30 minutes for the equivalent of first-class airline ticket. And be able to use that same vessel, that same ship to go into orbit or go to moon or go to Mars. I think it's going to really transform what we think of as possible. But can you imagine if we actually took the United Nations and instead of them meeting in New York, they actually met in a space station and they had the Earth like underneath them? I just wonder if that would shift sort of their thinking at all. What your thoughts were on that?
I am not sure I exactly understood the question.
So the question is, do you think it would change things if the United Nations met in a space station and had a good view of the Earth instead of meeting on the ground where they could kind of,
I see what you mean. Well, I know that a lot of astronauts that have given, talks and interviews have mentioned the fact how being in space actually really changes you, because it just gives you a different perspective. You're seeing something for the first time ever, seeing your planet where you have been born, where you know everyone, when you have every memory that you have, it's in there, it's been in there, and you're just out there and seeing this planet. And I can't describe it because I have not been there, but there are astronauts that have been changed by the fact and just changed. And I've heard them say this. And it would be maybe really cool to have the United Nations meet up there. I don't know how this would affect them, but I'm sure it would have an effect because it's space. You can't just not be inspired by space. It's something different, very special.
And the other thing is, you were talking about science is making us think of something bigger and not to kind of fight about the problems that we have. And I often think so much time and energy is wasted on activities that won't really bring us to a better world, like politics and trying to figure out, which stock is going to go up and that type of thing. And, just kind of looking at everything that's wrong in the world. Um, and the entertainment industry and sports and just all this, lots of human energy goes into these activities because people enjoy them and like them, and that's how they spend their time. Do you excuse me, do you see a path where we could actually make it so that science and discovery was as entertaining to people, like actually participating and asking fundamental questions and trying to figure out new things? I mean, there's 8 billion of us in the world. Can you imagine all those brains actually being applied to discovery and science?
Well, to have all the people interested in the same thing, it's sort of an impossible thing because every person is going to have its own interest after all. I mean, there is just so much you can do to inspire someone about something. But we try our best. We try our best. Me as an outreacher in science and STEM fields, I try my best. And yes, we get a lot of people interested, but then you're always going to have others that show no interest for science whatsoever, but they don't bother you. At least they're not going to deny it. The problem are those who deny it and are trying to get on the way of it. I've had these people, everyone has run into these people. I'm sure that they don't believe in the moon landing, or they think that the earth is flat, or they're so down the hole on religious facts that they think, for example, that the earth is only 6,000 years old. No matter what facts, scientific facts you present to them. And then we have these communities everywhere in the world that it's hard to deal with. But it's better at reaching people at younger ages because it's usually at when you're young when you get an interest in something and that keeps you going for the rest of your life. It's rare that you change your mind later on. Like with me, I was interested in astronomy and here I am, decided to continue my whole life to deal with it. And same with these folks, like trying to reach out for younger students, the young generation, trying to show them where things are important, trying to help them prioritize what's important. Then this could affect to have a better community for the future that would contribute to the science and be very helpful. But yes, nowadays we deal a lot with communities that even with the James Webb Space Telescope, when they shared the most historic moments, the photos that were taken of the deepest parts of the universe, you have these people around the world that they deny the fact that that is the truth. And not only they deny the fact, they try to convince other people not to believe that because they think it's all made up, it's propaganda and all of that. And these are some very sensitive people, and it's hard to reach to them and change their mind, to be honest. It's sometimes I refuse to even go on with them because they have made up their mind and it's hard to change them. But as for the politics are good and are not good. Politics can make peace. Politics can make great things because they have the power to do. But do they want to do it? It's another matter. Like, do they want to support science? Do they want to fund scientific projects or build observatories, build rockets, and support engineers and scientists and medicine and all that? Or do they want to do campaigns and spend all the money in things that are not gonna last, are not gonna help us to have, to improve the future for our younger generations. And it's hard with a lot of countries, including my country, which is a very young country. As I mentioned, we got our independence in 2008, and we're still trying to build our economy, trying to build and make great relations with other countries, which is a very big problem because me as a student in science is facing political issues when I'm trying to do science and I'm trying to travel to other countries to meet with scientists, to do great projects, to accomplish observations, to visit observatories. I get my visa denied by these governments of these countries because I am from the Republic of Kosovo and they do not recognize my country. And why is that? It's because some politicians agreed that we're not friends as countries. And that's going to affect the rest of the population of all the countries that having these issues. And I hope that in the future, we're going to have less aggression among countries, be more peaceful to each other. And then this would allow all of us to be friends to each other. Because all of these fights, all of this hate between people, it's being caused by governments, unfortunately. And governments are important because they have the power to change that if they want to. So we have to allow the right people.
It also goes back to the people, like you were saying. I mean, the reason the governments and the politicians do that is because that's how they get the interest and how they motivate the people to support them. So it's a really difficult problem to solve.
It is difficult because you can say a lot before you get elected, and when you get elected, you can not do a lot what you said. And it happens very often. We face that every day. So I hope it will get better in the future. All I can say is I hope.
I mean, the way you hear about debates and the type of people that get elected and how they act in office seems to be becoming less and less an intellectual type of activity and more kind of like spectator sport type of activity.
Yeah, well, as I said, I hope it gets better, and it's not always up to us to try to choose the best candidate to vote because you think this is the best, and then it happens. Maybe it's not later after the election, and it happens everywhere. And this is why we try to change our minds. We try to listen. We try to, do our best. And I mean, it all works as a team after all. We cannot do things just by one person deciding to do on their own way. We have to agree to things. We have to agree and come up with solution about things. That's how it's going to work with everyone, with everything.
Now, if you had an opportunity to take a trip to space, would you?
I would if I had the opportunity. Because a lot of people, in fact, they are saying like, oh, we can't wait to see you to go to space. And I'm like, that's not my career. I'm not like currently aiming to become an astronaut because a lot of people mistake that for my planetary science degree. But if I ever had the opportunity as a tourist or whatever, I would take it in a heartbeat. Absolutely.
How far would you consider going? Just to orbit, to the moon? Would you immigrate to Mars? The Kuiper Belt, wow.
Well, as I said, I'm quite obsessed with the asteroids. It would be nice to go by like the main belt or like visit an asteroid. It's just like a small asteroid to be able to see the asteroid and then all the night sky. It would be amazing. It's different when you go to like a bigger planet such as Mars. It has an atmosphere and it's a different viewing. For me personally, I would be very interested to go like close to a comet or an asteroid. Of course, right now we're talking about fiction and all that.
Well, the future has always been fiction until we write it.
Everything is possible.
And everything that we think is impossible for us because we don't put the energy to make it happen.
Yeah, everything is impossible until it happens.
So let's say that you or one of your children or grandchildren immigrates to Mars, and it's 200 years in the future, and it's your great granddaughter, and she's on Mars. She's in history class in high school, and she's writing a paper about the 2020s, about this decade.
Oh
So,
my God.
you were telling us about 200 years in the future. She's 200 years in the future, looking back at this decade. What do you hope happens in this decade that would be worth remembering in 200 years?
Oh my God, that's a very tough question. Honestly, that's a very tough question, but hopefully in this decade, I would love to have a Earth, first of all, to have our planet with no wars at all, going anywhere in any country, in any continent, just having a peaceful moment for once on our planet. And the other thing would be able to probably visit the moon, make a historic landing that would be remembered, like the 60s are remembered for. Because every time we talk about 60s, my first thought is like, oh, the landing, the moon landing. And this would be amazing. And this would be incredible to have something like that. And not just the moon, but maybe Mars, or like would be the time when we actually colonize Mars, like the first time ever. And then wherever we go in the future, we're always going to look back at that moment because that's when it happened. And hopefully, something like this would be able to happen in this decade. And we can only hope for the best.
I hope so. I see this series of interviews, all 1,840 of them,
Oh my
being
God.
being sort of like different viewpoints of this decade and how we're looking at the future and things like that. So that that person in high school 200 years from now will have something to base their report on. But that's pretty much all the questions I had. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
No, I would just like to thank you for choosing me to be part of this interview. I'm really honored. It was very nice to share all of this with you. It was very much fun to talk about things that generally I don't get questioned about, like in interviews and so on. It was very nice, very thoughtful questions that made me actually think about a lot of things. I liked it very much. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much also, and good luck on your research. And I look forward to seeing all the work that you're doing, turn into wonderful things.
Thank you so much.
Have a good evening.
You as well.